To my friend Charlie Kirk, rest now, brother. We have the watch, and I'll see you in Valhalla.
Okay. All right. Look, that was a clip of FBI Director Kashyap Pramod Patel raised a Hindu telling Charlie Kirk, who is a Christian nationalist, that he will see him in Valhalla, the eternal, or at least until Ragnarok, Norse pagan hall for the glorious dead. And then someone edited a Rammstein song into it, gave Cash blonde hair and zero melanin. I don't mean to make light of the murder or dismiss the intense socio-cultural divide that has been inflamed, but this really has been the most clownish, slipshod, make up stuff as we go along investigation I remember ever seeing. I have this feeling that they picked Kash Patel as FBI director because of his wild incompetence. Like, if they picked someone who didn't look like a perpetually confused owl, all the people would think, hey, maybe they're really trying to pull something here. But anyways, I've got a bit of a spiel here, Mark, so strap in. Oh, hi, by the way. It's been a minute.
How you doing, Greg?
Oh, it's currently 5:30 p.m. off the coast of Sicily. So let's get this. We don't want to spoil the light. We're in like the golden hour of photographic lighting, I'm told. So over the past 7 days, I really haven't engaged with this story, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which has sparked another round of intense left-right political animosity due to me being part of the media strategy for the Global Samud Flotilla, which is sailing towards the Israeli Navy, actively committing the final solution in the Gaza Strip. I've got to remain as balanced in messaging as possible and not give my customary hot takes. Nonviolence in all of its forms is a tactic in the activist handbook. And in this context, it's really the only option that we have. When confronting those who control the apparatus of state violence and are thus self-appointed, or thus the self-appointed authority that determines what type of political violence is acceptable and what type is not, we on this humanitarian flotilla exposed to the possibility of military action on our bunch of ragtag vessels have to be strategic about what we put out there. So I think this episode, it's kind of going to be strategic, but also it's going to be the correct messaging, I think, going forward as a one people. So the assassination of Charlie Kirk has certainly raised the threat assessment for the entire flotilla, as the U.S. government and Trump administration have declared war on anything they determine to be the left. I know a lot of you who watch this channel or this podcast or listen will be offended by the fact that they keep calling liberals the left, but we're going to put that aside for right now. It's right. Anyways, this war on the left has raised the threat assessment, because this transnational endeavor to establish a humanitarian corridor into the Gaza Strip is very much seen as a left-wing action full of anti-West, Hamas-supporting, useful idiots. And my intent with this episode is to try to sew back the fissure between what is commonly called the left and the right that the ruling class clearly so desperately are trying to manufacture in the wake of Kirk's death. Working class solidarity, as you and I have observed, Mark, has been growing slowly over the past few years. Over the healthcare racket, the California wildfires, Blackstone buying up all the single-family homes during COVID, the genocide in Palestine, foreign war and intervention after intervention, most recently in Venezuela, off the coast of Venezuela, and the absurd drama surrounding the Epstein files. Traditional actions within traditional factions within left-wing, liberal, and right-wing politics are actively shifting, dissolving, and coming together. So I ask that we all accept a baseline not to think and behave how the U.S. government, FBI, and Mossad want us, and ruling class by extension, want us to behave and think. So welcome to Colonial Outcasts, y'all, the anti-colonial podcast that asserts that as citizens of the U.S., we are also inwardly colonized by our own empire with this divide and rule bullshit that we do in every other country we wish to dominate. So we should probably stop buying into it here at home. Anyways, how's it going over in the States, Mark? I'm kind of taking a pleasure cruise across the Mediterranean, just watching this from afar, and it's hugely depressing.
Honestly, I know you're going to say that I'm always too optimistic, but I'm extremely optimistic by what I'm seeing. I know the intention of all of this was to create a divide, but I think that has significantly backfired, especially And I attribute this to in a large part to conspiracy theories. There's some, regardless of whether or not a conspiracy theory is valid or it's accurate, I do have a unique take on how we should view conspiracy theories in these times, and I think that it's played a good bulwark against civil war and division. And I'll just read this real quick, this comment I made to somebody who made the point that conspiracy theories can be dangerous and can be unhelpful. I take a different approach. And again, this is not me trying to push conspiracy theory. I just have a unique approach on the function that they play. And here's what I said. Okay. I said, unfortunately, conspiracy is the reality we live in. As much as I'd like to think that we live in a world that things just happen and this was just violent individuals harming each other, Israel and just the entire ruling class in general has proven to engage in nefarious plots that go beyond the realm of normalcy and civility. True, the right is full of violent, gun-skilled nut jobs, and they do believe in crazy, ridiculous conspiracy theories, but there are too many discrepancies around this event to just assume the official narrative. I also have an unconventional opinion on the effects of conspiracy theories. I think that in these times, conspiracy theories can play a role in preventing civil war. The reason why is if government wants to instigate civil war by pushing an official narrative to put right versus left, then conspiracy theories can function in preventing that, in so much as they sow enough doubt in the public mind
to not kill each other.
Yeah, enough. Where else I spot? Anyways,
this is a long-ass comment.
Yeah, about the government's honesty, thus preventing people from engaging in violent behavior towards each other, instead directing their rage against a dishonest government, as well as triggering a red flag for the public to be on high alert for anything that may be intended to create violence amongst each other. This, regardless of the validity of the conspiracy theory, is in this case a huge safeguard against horizontal violence. So I hope that makes sense. That's my take. I believe that conspiracy theories have flooded the internet regarding the situation, and it has prevented people from accepting this mainstream narrative that this is a violent far left conspiracy against Christianity.
I have seen that with some commentators on the right, saying, as much as I hate leftists, why would they benefit from this? And of course, they're blaming Israel for all the wrong reasons because of the Zog anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, because they won't talk about capitalism. But at least they're not calling for blood in the streets. And exactly. Over the past, that's basic information operations. And when it comes to conspiracies, we talk a lot about the same things we do overseas, we do here. We actively do these kind of shenanigans with foreign governments that we don't like, that won't let us naturalize, that try to nationalize their own resources. So I saw a lot of people publicly celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. I saw journalists I respect revising the history of Charlie Kirk because they're shook and also don't want to get shot. So they're trying to pretend like he was not as bad as he was. In terms of the violence that he spread through speech and his platform. And some people on the right are canonizing him, turning him into a martyr. There was a meme of him shaking hands with Malcolm X. What? The phenomena of the wokeification of Kirk is a bizarre phenomenon that hopefully we can get into. But now that things have chilled out a bit, barely after a week, let's have a chat. So, and here to help us understand what's going on here today from a former Turning Points USA perspective, we are joined by a guest who recently came onto my radar over the past 2 months. Caroline Stout is a lawyer, progressive political activist, and former conservative who has seen the inside of the movement and chosen a different path. Now, she spent years in right-wing spaces before realizing how deeply misinformation, exclusion, and fear were shaping the narrative. Today, she uses her legal training and personal experience to unpack propaganda and help others navigate their own political shifts. Her mission is to ensure people feel informed, empowered, and unafraid to question what they've been told. So thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to join you guys.
Yeah, so we just had to touch on the conspiracy theory thing. This is beyond the scope of this episode entirely. We are more concerned about how to reach people on the right who are not necessarily calling for the blood of leftists to fill the streets, but are kind of questioning, what's really going on here. I'm usually the anti-conspiracy theory guy when it comes to this kind of stuff on in our own dynamic, but I'm like, this is the most slipshod, bizarre investigation I've seen in a minute. And, we just had
Stoker is like the Dana Scully to my Fox Mulder, for clarification.
Yeah,
there you go.
I don't have the power suits though. The FBI power suit. So I try to do that, but I have to admit it's absolutely bizarre. Incompetence at the least. Incompetence plus, some sort of cover up at worst. Maybe even to cover up your own. So the bottom line is, it's bad, and this is just coming off like the resolution of the Karen Reed trial. But anyways, to get right into it, Caroline, like first, can you tell us a bit about your background as a former Turning Points USA staffer? Like, what exactly is Turning Points USA? Why is it important within conservative spaces? And how did your educational journey land you on the political left?
Absolutely. So I first got involved with Turning Point in 2014. I was in high school at the time, and I was interested in politics. I had started my little high school Republicans club, and this is in like the suburbs of Houston. So pretty red area where being a Republican and being right wing was just the default option for a lot of people within my community of origin, being the people that were involved in church, loosely involved in politics. It was just kind of an easy path into politics, right wing specifically at that point. So Turning Point was founded in 2012 by Charlie Kirk. And at the time, it was intended to be a youth engagement and voter education organization. Charlie would say that he wants for the organization to be the moveon.com of the right. And then getting into media, the goal was to kind of be the conservative answer to the quote unquote mainstream leftist media. And so this was done through on-campus engagement by partnering either with college Republicans or Young Americans for Liberty or Young America's Foundation, or starting TPUSA chapters in and of themselves. So I got involved in high school, went to CPAC with them. For those of you who don't know, CPAC is the Conservative Political Action Conference, which I was told at the time is basically like Republican Christmas or like the conservative Super Bowl, where everyone comes together and just celebrates, and all the media people are there, all the candidates are there, and it's just a big old red party. And after that, in college, founded our on-campus Turning Point USA chapter at Texas A&M. And then I went on staff as a field director. So I would go on campus and recruit people and hold up the little like big gov sucks and like socialism sucks signs and try and instigate conversation with people. Not the debate that we see, like the go viral debates and stuff. It was really genuine conversation with people who weren't otherwise interested in politics. That was really kind of the goal, was to pick the low hanging fruit and say like, hey, like come to our club, come have pizza. Let's tell you about why capitalism is the answer to all problems. And that was really what I did. The summer after that, so we're in the summer of 2016, I went and interned at their headquarters, which at the time was outside of Chicago, and got involved with the media part of the organization, which involved writing articles and pushing out content and pushing out social media content that was heavily conservative biased. And a lot of the quote unquote reporting, like we were all like teenagers and like young 20s, we don't have journalism degrees. So like, I wouldn't even call it reporting. It basically is kind of, I don't know, I think of like monkeys with keyboards, just pushing out conservative content. I ended up doing a lot of that, going to their conferences, and then going on full time remotely, running these websites and or the news outlet at the time. And so I continued to push out content. And that's when I started to realize the bias that was inherent in the content that was being pushed out. And it was very, very concerning to me, because I saw the shift in the right in that 2016 timeframe, where things just became a lot more intense. The stakes were much higher, and the rhetoric was much more inflammatory. And this coincided with the rise of Donald Trump getting the nomination, using language like lock her up, build the wall, like things like that, that really stoked at this resentment and demonization of people on the left. And I kind of at that point looked in the mirror and realized that this was not something that I could be a part of any longer. So in 2017, early-ish 2017, I left the organization. And during that time, I was studying political science in college and learning about other systems of governance, taking a critical look at US government, not in a way that was intended to be biased or intended to indoctrinate, but in an honest academic way where you actually look at the flaws of the system, the flaws in the history, and look at how we as a society can be better. And so that's when I started to undo my political upbringing and really look for the better way.
Yeah. So like, what was your position within Turning Points USA? Like before you got, when you were in the green room, you're talking about like being a media staffer, or what exactly positions did you hold within the apparatus itself?
Yeah, so it ranged from just writing content, so being like a contributor to their news organization. So writing content, writing articles, wrote a lot of like pop culture kind of stuff with it, like interwove conservative ideals into it. So it's a little bit more subtle. And then also reported on like campus news and being like, oh, this evil atheist is trying to silence Christians on campus or something, just content like that that's designed to like scare people into thinking that there's a liberal agenda to indoctrinate college students. And so contributor, staff writer while I was an intern. And then starting in the fall of 2016, I was the editor of the online news outlet, and also was referred to as the operations manager of the online news outlet. So those were my specific titles.
Yeah. Did you ever meet Charlie Kirk, just as a side note?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first time I met Charlie was in 2014 when I was like 16 or 17, and that's how I first got involved. And I met him throughout. Like, I mean, it was a smaller organization at the time, so it wasn't I don't think he had the same celebrity status that he does now and did towards the end. Like, he was a friend, like he was someone we worked with and worked for. And then when I was the like editor and operations manager, I worked some with him directly, like one-on-one, where he'd send me content that I would push out. So I don't personally have any complaints about working with him, and that's not just me like sanitizing the memory of him post death, but like genuinely, like I thought he was a good boss and a good respectful person.
Did you notice any kind of shift happening with him, like on a personal level? Like, was he one way when you first met him or towards the beginning of when you got to know him? And did you see any type of like external pressure, infiltration, influence that may have taken him off of the baseline of who he was when you met him? Did you notice anything like that? Any type of influence that started to bring him out of, I guess, a normal character that what you were used to?
Yeah, I would not describe myself as being so inner circle that I would have picked up on that. I certainly wouldn't say that I was close with him. I don't want to mischaracterize my relationship.
Right, but like as far as his leadership, did you notice like?
Yeah. So back then, back in this era, the 2014 to 2017 era, the refrain that he would say when he was talking to staff, talking to activists, that Turning Point USA focused on limited government and fiscal responsibility. That's it. He would say, we don't deal with the social issues. That's what divides us.
So something changed.
Exactly. And that was after I left was when when I think that shift kind of came into play, because back then he would talk about the importance of a secular worldview in policymaking. And that is totally antithetical to the organization now that has an arm called TPUSA Faith. Like it's
Right.
completely different. So there definitely was a switch. I don't know what specifically caused it, whether it was like a donor or something. I don't know if it was.
I have theories, but yeah.
Yeah. It could be a donor, could be him looking at Trump coming to power and saying, "Hey, I want to be in the room with him where there are decisions being made," and kind of changing the organization to that. So it really there definitely was a shift after that, after Trump's election to the first term.
And so, he's kind of being, and we're going to talk about this later, like canonized, seen as a saint, like an all-around good guy. But like for people outside of the conservative world, he was a very violent propagandist that specifically targeted the most vulnerable people in our society.
Right.
Do people see him as that way? I mean, this is a rhetorical question, but like, I don't know, from my perspective and a lot of people's perspective, like, how could you not see that? I guess
there's. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Like recently, like we just saw this. Like a lot of people on the right who are kind of questioning Israel and more American first people are like, no, Charlie Kirk was finally starting to like question, America's involvement with Israel. Okay, whatever. But like he was still like a really violent propagandist all the way throughout his life.
Yes,
And I get
absolutely.
a chuckle, when someone is wearing the, Free Palestine shirt and the gay flag. And
it's like, they would literally murder you, right?
So, it's funny. I used to say that, hey, if you as a gay person would go to Gaza, they'd throw you off of tall buildings, right? Now they don't have any tall buildings left, so I don't.
When you mess with the bull, you get the horns.
Is that too soon? I'm sorry. Maybe you shouldn't kill Jews, stupid Muslims.
I mean, he's certainly not remembered that way within conservatives.
No, they're sanitizing his image completely.
Let me just point out in that video the applause.
That was a big audience.
That's a big audience. There's a lot of applause, and so I don't think they're ignoring these clips. I think that they just quietly agree with them. They agree with what he's saying. People who are on the right, like, look at him and talk about him as, oh, he spoke truth. He was not afraid to stand up and like talk about what we believe in. And that was a really, really disturbing thing for me on my like personal social media, going through and seeing all these tributes to him, all of these people talking about how he spoke truth and he's this amazing person and whatnot. And while I, of course, condemn the assassination, I condemn gun violence in any form, we don't need to agree with everything he said to do that. Like there's just been this attempt to paint him as this perfect figure that he wasn't.
Yeah. There tends to be this inclination to try and overcorrect or deify people instead of just accepting, like, you don't have to celebrate his assassination, and you also don't have to sanitize his image. You could just make the conclusion he was a serious xenophobic douchebag, and he should not have had an assassination plot attempted to get against him, because that doesn't help anything. All that does is create a martyr for Trump to then go up and say that we need to do something about the violent extreme left or the people. And then he mixed in violence against ICE. He assimilated violence against ICE with the assassination of Kirk, which he just had to throw that in there just to keep the cultural hegemony around ICE.
Basically, yeah. Well, that's his new Gestapo. That's going to be his Gestapo extrajudicial police force. But like, we have seen some really insane stuff too. Like, usually, conservatives don't really have fond views of Malcolm X, who did believe in political violence and was a Muslim. Now we're seeing like commentators like post these AI slop of Malcolm X and Charlie Kirk in heaven. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. X. Malcolm responds, "You're all right for a white boy, Charlie."
Yeah, like
That's
this is fan fiction. Like,
Yeah.
why are
Yeah.
we writing posthumous fan fiction about Charlie in heaven with another assassinated figure? Like, that's crazy.
So, but I just think from like their perspective, it seems to me on the outside that they think that they are in like a national liberation struggle against like the oppressive left who wants to rob them of their rights, speech, put them in FEMA camps. Is that kind of what's going on here?
Yeah, absolutely. There is such a demonization of the left. So for some context, the way that I grew up in the my community and like socialization, I genuinely thought that you could not be a Christian and also be a Democrat. Like, it was so interwoven together that it was a faith issue if I were to start thinking about liberal policies. That I was taught that liberalism and the Democratic Party was so antithetical to Christianity that like my salvation would be at issue. And so I think that comes into play because when you have people on the right mandating loyalty to the right and this deification of Charlie Kirk, it becomes a religious mandate as well.
And that's kind of like what's concerning here because, as Chris Hedges just recently observed, quote, martyrs are used by messianic movements to sanctify violence. To show any mercy or understanding towards the enemy is to betray the martyr and the cause the martyr died defending. Charlie Kirk is being actively canonized into sainthood. Who was he really, and how do we bridge this willfully constructed political divide? Like, martyrs are the lifeblood of violent extremist movements a lot of the time. And so like it is martyrdom because, as you just observed, like faith, this interpretation of Christian faith is baked into the political ideology. And the Democrats did this. As a leftist, I hate the Democratic Party. And I usually beef with liberals, but like they're conflating two completely politically different ideologies into anything that's basically not them. They did this. We have to band together. And, even Matt Walsh, as I brought up before, he posted shortly after this happened. Matt Walsh is he works at the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro, is a big following. He says, the entire right has to band together. Enough of this infighting bullshit. We are up against demonic forces from the pit of hell. They are killing us in our churches. They tried to kill our president. They killed Charlie, one of our greatest advocates. Put the personal squabbles aside. Now's not the time. This is existential, a fight for our own existence and the existence of our country. Having like worked with these kind of like influencers and commentators and been in those spheres, do they actually believe this? Or are they just weaponizing this for like a grift or to consolidate power? Because it's not borne out by the facts at all.
Right. I don't know if it matters if they believe it or not, though. Like, I think that what matters is the fact that they're saying it. Like, I think that some people probably do believe that there are demonic forces. I think there's a lot of people in the Christian conservative right that do believe in this. But I think the fact that they are using this language and using this rhetoric is more important than whether they believe it or not, because the harm's the same.
Now, we have to look at the other angle of this, though. We can't mention Charlie Kirk without mentioning Candace Owens, because I don't know if y'all have been tracking. This is, I guess, like the silver lining. I'm not trying to like sugarcoat anything, but I think that it's a little bit more. I think their efforts to use Charlie as a martyr for the far right against the left is getting extremely complicated. I don't think it's going to be that simple, because you have your America First crowd. You have your Groypers with Nick Fuentes, who hate Israel. They hate Donald Trump now. They hated Charlie Kirk. So you got this split, this major fracture that's happening in the right. So divide et impera, it can go both ways. We are seeing a division happening along the right. And now that Ben Shapiro is taking over Turning Points, which is interesting. it's going to be a huge problem. And I think that it's going to create a huge suspicion surrounding the whole point of Turning Point. And I think
Yeah.
it's going to call into question what he stood for this whole time. Like if it's getting out now that he was questioning his stance on Israel. Supposedly, Candace Owens and Dave Smith and a
Right.
few others have commented that they were having private conversations with him saying that he was actually starting to backtrack. And I guess their friendship got to him and he was going to come out and be more I guess skeptical of Israel. And I
Right.
think that because that's now getting out, it's going to call into question a lot of the previous things he was pushing, like pushing these identitarian politics, pushing these culture wars, pushing this xenophobia against other groups. I think it could have that effect. Like, and with Candace Owens, she did a major, passionate live yesterday. Over
Yeah.
237,000 people were viewing it. It has millions of views. See, people aren't going to now go to Ben Shapiro. They're not, now that
Right.
Kirk is gone, they're not going to flood over to him. They will be flooding over to Candace Owens, who is the
Yes.
only person who can match Charlie Kirk's celebrityism in the
Mhm.
conservative space. And because now she is calling doubt into the assassination and pointing fingers at Israel, the Mossad, the elites. She even called for, I'm going to play this video real quick. This is a screen recording from her live yesterday. And
Okay.
this says a lot. This is actually some class consciousness shit. And again, I'm not sanitizing Candace Owens. She has been
Right.
extremely harmful to minority communities, but this is good for psychological analysis, in my opinion.
Owens. Wow, 260,000 people watching live, you guys. That is amazing. That makes me feel so good because I know that that number represents the people who are waking up. This is not left or right. I don't care. Do stop trying to make this a trans issue or right. That whole debate, it's low, guys. I'm telling you that is not where we need to be right now as a society. We are fighting evil people who rule over us and impact both sides. Okay, that's the wake-up call. That's the wake-up call we all need right now. And I hope that people are waking up to that fact as we look into what happened here. I'm going to get into some of your comments here. I am totally in the wrong document, okay? First up, we have Anna P. I think this is the first one, right? Am I right, Anna P?
Okay, so anyways, she says a lot of class consciousness stuff. She pushes for class war in that live. Again, I don't know if I can never tell if the angles of these people are sincere, given their previous behavior towards minorities and towards, a lot of hateful behavior. However, it's irregardless of her intentions or what the moralisms are behind her. It's the psychological effect that it's going to have on her audience that I'm curious about.
Interesting.
That's going to be interesting.
And so from your perspective, I watched one of your videos where you said, you've talked about how the right wing always sets the stage for what's coming next. We all accept the premise that authoritarianism is on the rise, specifically right wing authoritarianism, aka fascism. But how will institutions like Turning Points USA package it so that young Americans will think this is actually like an existential struggle for freedom? Or will it not work? Because these Candace Owens and even Nick Fuentes, it says he renounces MAGA. So they're the thought leaders behind the base that got Trump elected. So what does this mean? Is the entire conservative, political space kind of in a stage of transformation?
I think it's fair to say that it is in a stage of transformation. I mean, I don't think that Ben Shapiro is going to be able to fill the shoes of Charlie Kirk, aside from the fact, just ignoring the fact that he is, his voice is, I can't stand his voice. I think that probably will push enough people away. But I don't think he'll be able to have that same charisma and same media stamina that Charlie Kirk had. I think that Mark's right, that people are going to flock to Candace Owens because the fact that she is, whether there is merit to her question asking surrounding Charlie Kirk's death, I think that is something that people on the right really lean into heavily. But in terms of kind of galvanizing the Turning Point USA community and the MAGA community in general, I think they're trying their best to do that. I don't see how that works long term.
I think it's failing already. I think that even short term, like you had this punch of emotion right after Charlie Kirk's death. Trump,
understandably,
and Trump pounces on it. They try to it's like you're trying to stoke a fire and you want it to get it burning, but immediately the right wing conservative influencers online just doused the fire with conspiracy theory that, hey, Israel's behind this. They're trying to pit us against each other. Or it's a Jewish plot, or they threw in some anti-Semitic. Because either way, the point is the fervor that we were expecting, like after the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, that they were hoping for, it didn't happen. It didn't happen because of the douse of media information, and I contribute that to the people who I call the bridges. These are the people who are bridges between the right and the left. They can speak the language of the right. They can use the same, America first patriotic sentiments.
Yeah.
And then they're able to, send over some leftism to infiltrate the right. And I think that these types of people online are pivotal in this fight. And I think that that's what's prevented this, this Reichstag fire, this night of the long knives from happening.
Yeah, but exactly. I would say even that, they're not as united as, we think they are, because, I've been on, constitutionalist, anti-authoritarian right-wing podcasts before, and, they obviously don't agree with the Daily Wire and stuff like that. But even now, the Daily Wire, who's been very MAGA, and Matt Walsh, they're kind of eating their own right now. So here's a good example. Pam Bondi yesterday. If you go and print posters with Charlie Kirk's picture for a vigil, you have to let them do that, because apparently someone went into a print shop and was trying to, print in memoriam posters for Charlie Kirk. The owner of the business refused service. She said, you have to let them do that. We can prosecute you for that. We have right now our civil rights unit looking at that. And then Matt Walsh, the same fascist who just said the previous comment about how, Democrats are, demons from the pit of hell. He says, get rid of her today. This is insane. Conservatives have fought for decades for the right to refuse service to anyone. We won the fight. Now Pam Bondi wants to roll it back for no reason. The employee who didn't print the flyer was already fired by his employer. This stuff is being handled successfully through free speech and free markets. This is totally gratuitous and pointless. We need the AG focused on bringing down the left-wing terror cells, not prosecuting Office Depot, for God's sakes. Okay, right. That's official White House policy. Trump said, or Stephen Miller more likely is like, hey, we're going to pounce on this. Like anything that's said mean about Kirk, any refusal to really toe the line is leftist terrorism, crack down on it. And they're really not towing the line like they thought they would.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think when you attack free speech, when you attack free speech, and the organization Turning Point, one of their pillars is free speech, that cognitive dissonance is not going to disappear for a lot of people just overnight.
Yeah. Well, how they're framing it, which is interesting, it's Charlie Kirk just said true things, and they tried to cancel him for it. But the left is celebrating his death. Well, I remember Charlie Kirk when George Floyd was murdered by the police. That was a little more than just saying true things. It was actually outright lies. He died from fentanyl overdose. What?
Right.
Yeah. So I think people were kind of asking me what was hang on, I have it here somewhere. Charlie Kirk's the hate speech that he promoted, and a lot of people on the right promoted, and how it's actually a form of violence.
Yes.
Did I accidentally? I had a whole thing prepped, and I can't seem to find it. But yeah, I mean, how do you address that when if you're talking to a current like conservative or someone in Turning Point USA, and they said like, we're trying to get canceled for free speech. We're just saying the truth. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you engage in inherently violent rhetoric and inherently untrue rhetoric, you can't. I mean, you can claim free speech, but there's going to be consequences to that rhetoric, and so I don't really see how that free speech defense works on the right, especially when they're attacking other people's free speech. It just doesn't really compute.
Right. And what we have, if you want a term for like the violence inflicted by, commentators like Charlie Kirk, or Nick Fuentes, if you want an actual term to research, it's called stochastic terrorism. It involves influential figures using indirect, coded, or varied language to demonize a group or individual, thereby increasing the likelihood of statistically predictable, yet individually unpredictable acts of ideologically motivated violence by unknown individuals. The instigator can then claim plausible deniability for the resulting violence, making it difficult to attribute direct responsibility or to prosecute. Key characteristics.
The right is just so rife with this. And I mean, I think there is, like, to an extent, of course, demonization of the right on the left. But the current 2025 right wing, it seems like this is so foundational to what they do, to their ideology, whether you're demonizing immigrants, you're demonizing the queer community, you're demonizing anybody who proclaims to be leftist or liberal or Democrat. No matter what they actually believe in, if you do not have an R next to your name, you are automatically the enemy. And when you are on a, I guess, quote unquote, mission from God to save America, like, you are going to be able to justify violence against any threat to this God-given mission to save America. And that's what's so dangerous.
Right. And so, like, what do you
we saw this what you're talking about. It's stochastic. I can't say that term, but the
oh my god, it's Greek. Okay, it's stochastic terrorism.
Stochastic. Stochastic. Anyways, Trey and Corey, two young black males found hanging, ruled a suicide, even though one of their legs and arm was broken, happened in the wake of all of this. I have no doubt that this is all related to the violent calls, whatever forces were behind Charlie Kirk's, assassination. I do believe that the intent is to stoke on a violent civil war, or at least a war or at least micro wars that happen on racial lines. And so, two young black men already lynched in the wake of this rhetoric,
almost immediately too.
And then law enforcement just adding to the insanity of it by claiming that it was a suicide. I even see that as a message. I see that as law enforcement saying, hey, you know what side we're on. If there's a black person lynched, guess which side that we're going to be behind. And that's the terrifying part, is the law enforcement making a clear message to signaling to all the future would-be white lynchers, that, hey, if you lynch a black person, we're going to rule it a suicide. And I see that as being very intentional.
And that's coming from the top down. Like, the fact that Donald Trump pardoned all the January 6th insurrectionists, like that is telegraphing that you will not be held accountable for things, for political violence. So that isn't new. That isn't new, giving people permission to behave in a politically motivated, violent way.
Yeah. And I think they're only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. But I think there's too many people disillusioned on the right with what's going on as well. But yeah, stochastic terrorism, that's a new thing. a key element of it is to use the media for propagation, where the person carrying out the violence, again, may not have direct connection to any other users of violent rhetoric. And, as we see an authoritarian crackdown, they get to say what kind of violence is acceptable and what kind of violence is not. How do
Right.
how do conservatives then square the lack of uproar against the political violence by a lone wolf actor, lone wolf MAGA actor, against state representative, Melissa Horton and her husband in
Right.
Michigan, Democratic officials?
Right, exactly. I mean, this guy had a literal list full of Democrats that he was going and targeting. Like, this was a clearly politically motivated assassination of Melissa Hortman and her husband and their dog. That the right seems to conveniently forget and ignore. I think the fact, I think it really is just willfully ignoring that.
Is that most of their defense mechanisms?
Yeah,
when it comes to their worldview being challenged.
Exactly. Like, they will come back to the talking points that benefit and confirm their ideology. That's why you see in those clips with Charlie Kirk debating, he cuts people off before they have an opportunity to actually debate him. Like, they're just looking for little snippets and little talking points that on their own are highly, highly persuasive, but completely ignore any sort of nuance and context. And that's where authoritarianism, like control of thought, really thrives, is just saying, here's a list of these talking points. And that's what's so dangerous about organizations like Turning Point, because they're targeting young people who don't have the world experience and the life experience to have nuance and context. They're just given, here's your political ideology, put on this red hat, hold up this sign, and they're not able to combat or really think critically about what they believe in.
And we've kind of we definitely see this, that they definitely cut agitprop for sound bites. And now, some guy that, I occasionally beef with on social media, Cam Hybe, of Prager University, he's taking on this fearless tour that takes Charlie Kirk's free speech mission of engaging anybody in dialogue to colleges nationwide. We won't be silenced. It's like, bro, you're never
like,
gonna
who's trying to silence you?
Nobody. See,
literally,
so they're posting up things like, if you're looking at this, men cannot be women. Let's talk. Nobody should be killed over opinions. R.I.P. Charlie. So they're really taking this.
It's the victimhood. It's the desperate need for victimhood.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I think
go ahead.
Well, the problem with trying to get a conservative base that's very bitter about the current state of the economy, the current state of corruption, the problem with I guess continuing the culture wars is that once they feel like they've won, they don't really have another challenge. And I think
Exactly.
South Park actually has been honing in on this point. They've actually been making episodes making fun of the fact that now that MAGA has basically won the political sphere and they got their man in office and they even got ICE and law enforcement behind them, they're bored. They don't have the victimhood and that crusade to go on. They're not against all odds versus like the libs. They own the whole sphere. They got the complete power. So I think that boredom is going to lead to another, I guess, contrarian challenge, which I see as being this America First versus the MAGA movement, which is now being seen more and more as pro-establishment. So it's the perception that MAGA is now part of the establishment. And when you assimilate establishment with that, it includes Democrats. So now it's like MAGA is starting to turn into the Democrats in the mind of America First. And that's where things are going to get really interesting to see how that plays out. It's not a negative. It's not necessarily a positive. It's just something that I say we appreciate the complexity of this. And I believe that there's a lot of opportunities for us to exploit these little cracks in the iron wall of this, conservative fascist, soup that's been boiling for the previous 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say that, yeah, but also unlike the Democratic Party that can just keep fundraising off the threat of Republicans until, the world freezes over, the MAGA movement doesn't exist beyond Trump. Once he's gone, it's done.
Hopefully.
Do you think that's too optimistic?
I don't think that, like, to the same point that I don't think Ben Shapiro is going to be able to really take on the mantle of being TPUSA's figurehead. I know that JD Vance doesn't have that, like, charisma. I think it doesn't exist in the same form. I just hope that it doesn't transform into something worse.
Yeah. That's what a lot of the pundits and commentators keep saying. Like, Charlie Kirk was a moderate. You're not going to like who replaces him. Nick
It's like, yeah, I don't think Milo Yiannopoulos is going to be able to run Turning Point USA.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even know who that is.
I don't think that I do not believe that there's any coming back from the live that Candace Owens did yesterday. I think that was a huge shifting point in that 1 hour, hour and a half, however long it was. I think we just saw the entire conservative movement just flip. And if it didn't, it's going to be just a matter of days before that happens. Because the thing about Candace is she has such a respect from conservatives that even if you don't like her, or even if you are pro-Israel or you're a Zionist, you're not going to be able to withstand the social and peer pressure that's about to foment within Candace Owens' base. And it's going to take over. And because it's so contrarian, because it's so anti-establishment, it's going to have that appeal to now be the victim again. So you have to look for victimhood. If you lose it, your victimhood, meaning you're no longer like the oppressed minority, right wing. Now they need to find a next like level of victimhood, and that is going to be pushing against Zionist establishment control over the conservative spaces. So I think it's going to get interesting. That's where I'm landing.
I need to watch it. I haven't watched it. I've seen a lot of like clips and like people talking about it, but I need to look at that. See, I'm so like, I don't know. I get very like hesitant around like conspiracy theory type stuff, just because I know, like, having been a conservative, I'm like, I don't know if I'm like one of the people that's like primed to like buy into stuff. So I try to be really like cognizant of how much of that I consume. But I think you're right that there's been a lot of content that I have seen of people really, really saying like, y'all need to all listen to her. So that's been really interesting.
Yes, that's the depth. Listen to her is what I keep hearing too. So
yeah, exactly.
So I guess now that the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand moment has passed, it's been a week. It's already losing momentum. Yep. Like something else in this insane news cycle is going to happen. There's the assault on Gaza City. Russia. Right. And NATO's like deploying troops to Poland after Russia violated Polish airspace and hit targets inside that. Like, there's so much shit. Okay. Yeah. I think it's gonna pass, but how do we? Because I know you have a whole series on this. How do we reach out to conservatives? We're never gonna get the Matt Walshes on board, but like, how do you reach out to conservatives who are just like people who grew up around certain beliefs and don't necessarily understand what's going on? Not because I want to infantilize a certain section of the working class, but they've just like never been exposed to new ideas. Like, how do you do that?
I think you're right that like the really rabid people that we see online that are so MAGA, so bought into this idea that the left is demonic, essentially. I don't try to talk to them. I know that I'm not going to change their mind because I already am going to be perceived as an enemy by simply trying to present different ideas to them. But it is the people in the middle who don't realize or don't recognize that they were brought up and socialized in a space where they never had to develop their own ideology and they never had to really decide for themselves what they believe in. They just went with the default option. And so that's where I've really been able to connect with people online, is people who either have recently gone on that journey, or there are people in their lives that are starting to kind of ask new questions that they hadn't asked before. And I think that question asking really is the heart of it. asking good questions from a place of sincerity and not from a place of trying to troll people is really where I've seen people willing to have that conversation, because I was the person that was the recipient of those questions when I was in my early 20s and my like late teens. When I was a part of the Turning Point USA movement, I would have people say like, but why shouldn't we all have healthcare? And I wouldn't be able to come up with a good answer other than you're poor. Like that there isn't an answer to that.
You're not entitled to other people's labor is my favorite one.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. And like pointing out just the lack of good response that hasn't just been handed to you. Like, and another question to ask is like, so where did you hear that from? Like, who told you to say that? And pointing out that they got this talking point from Turning Point, from a news source. I'm like, okay, who funds them? Who benefits from you not having a livable wage? Who benefits from the economy being in turmoil? And so coming back to what Candace Owens was talking about is that class consciousness, because I think that's the only path forward, is not saying like, well, you need to switch from Republican to Democrat. Like, no, like point out that there are larger figures at play than just people with R's and D's behind their names.
I think everything you just said was full bars right there. Like it was 100% good advice for people in reaching out to conservatives. Like you nailed it on the head. You have to like ask them questions in a respectful manner. Like you're not trying to do a gotcha. You know,
right.
You're just trying to find that common ground and then build on it. And I think that one of the most successful methods I've had in reaching conservatives and letting them know that the far left is not their enemy, I'll ask them a simple question, and I'm fudging like accuracy here, but I do it for I have my own psyops in mind. I asked them, I said, like, what do you think the left is? Like, what is your definition of the left? And they said, oh, and then they'll name off a bunch of cultural shit, and they'll basically describe the liberals and neocons. And then I'll say, okay, I'm going to ask you one thing. Like, if you were in a room full of billionaire pedophiles who went to Epstein's Island, what would you do to them? And he'd be like, oh, I'd kill them, or whatever. And I said, do you think that the world's wealth should be concentrated up with these sick pedophile billionaires? Do you think that they should control the world? They said, nah. I said, congratulations, you're a radical leftist. And they're like, often like, no way. Now, am I being 100% accurate with that? No. But the point is, I'm getting them in the door of recognizing that the far left is not this evil,
it's not this demonic. Yeah.
And it's actually very, very working class. And I tell people this, if you want to win the right, you have to co-opt patriotism. You have to take possession.
Use their language. Exactly.
Take possession of it, redefine it, and let them know that patriotism is when you care about the people next to you on that landmass, and that you will care about the health of that. And you don't want evil oligarchs ruling over that land. There you go. You want them. And if you can just repackage that somehow, it's a great way in,
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know what they say, if you go far enough left, you get your guns back. And I was like,
yep.
You know what one of my favorite quotes is, man? Quote, under no pretext should arms and ammunition be surrendered. Any attempt to disarm the workers must be frustrated by force if necessary. Ugh, who said that? Oh, that
Blair
was
Mountain?
That was Karl Marx.
Oh, shit. That was Blair Mountain. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and don't mention Marx. Don't mention the word communism. Don't mention socialism. Those are like buzzwords that will send them running for the hills before you can
exactly. They'll 100%. But they'll find it on their own. Like if they start asking, if you ask the right questions and they start doing that inner work, they'll find their way there.
Exactly. Just don't end the conversation before it even begins by throwing out a word that gives them this trauma that's been instilled in them through propaganda.
Exactly. Literally, when I was in 7th grade, I made a T-shirt that said socialism on it and had a big X through it. That's how I was like, mentally at the time.
Don't be hard on yourself. I was hardcore right wing when I was in high school.
I was like evil socialism, and then like actually learning what it is, and actually learning how it's been demonized and why it's been demonized was huge. So like not using those words, but like actually finding those common values of caring for our neighbor, those common values of we just want what's best for ourselves, our family. We're not like, we don't think that people at the top should be able to hoard and just leave us all with crumbs. Like we can agree on those things. And if you can't agree on that, you're not changing their mind.
One thing that I was brainstorming the other day was how you can actually use the Bible to attack capitalism. And I go back to the point that I ask people, like, what is the DNA of capitalism? The DNA of capitalism is compounding interest. That is the DNA of capitalism. That is the ultimate point. Now, there's more complicated than that, but that's the ultimate point. Well, compounding interest is considered a grave sin in the Old Testament, right? It's forbidden. And Christianity always viewed capitalism as a great sin up until only a few hundred years ago.
Yep.
It wasn't until a certain point. So if you use that and you use the fact that like you kind of personify mammon, like this is very effective with especially like evangelical Christians. You tell them that, look, you want to use the demonic route, you personify capitalism as the demon mammon. When Jesus said you cannot serve God and mammon, if you go back to the ancient definition, it's capitalism. It's the love of money, the love of profits, the love of usury or compounding interest. If you just equate that, like you can use the demonic iconography to assimilate that. And I found that to be very effective, believe it or not.
That's fantastic.
We could go down that whole rabbit hole. Unfortunately,
I know we can.
We could do a whole episode on evangelical psyops, man.
Yeah, look, I'm losing the light. So, also,
it's just getting beautiful out there. What do you mean? That now the colors are really starting to show in the horizon.
It's the golden hour.
This is the part where you take some glamour shots, bro. Get Assad from Habibi House out there and take some pictures of that.
I haven't showered in 5 days. Okay.
Oh Jesus! I know I can smell it through my.
You can't smell a photograph. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's right. Okay, so I guess what we could all agree on, like, a civil war ain't happening yet. Like there was so reactionary when that came out, and it's kind of died down, thankfully. But honestly, like, it's hard to take it seriously as well. Like, it's very daunting because they have the guns. People that they voted for control the apparatus of state violence and ICE and stuff. But like, they were saying like it's time for civil war. Like after Cracker Barrel changed.
Yeah, and no one's done shit. Yeah.
You know, like January 6th was like the most radical action that they've taken, but like they're not people who really go to protests or like engage in civil disobedience or
Yeah, because they're driven by the powers of capitalism and they have too much to lose.
By the way, this took place in, I believe, Huntington Beach, like right after Charlie Kirk's assassination. And this to me just seems so contrived and planned out and scripted. I'm going to play this.
We need to be vicious, just like they are.
Yep.
And I hope our federal law enforcement does what they must to root out the radical left.
Crush the left! Crush the left! Crush the left! Crush the left! Let them come! Let them come!
We must destroy the radical left once and for all. Every radical left activist, every NGO.
Fight, fight, fight!
I don't know. Those guys look really feddy. Feddiest feds I've ever fedded. So.
Yeah, that guy really wasn't. That guy's not exactly a political firebrand. We must crush the radical left. Oh, I think Caroline dropped 1 second.
Yeah, we lost Caroline.
I was gonna wrap anyways.
That was good. I'm glad we had her on. That's really good insight into turning points. Really good insight.
Yeah. She said my Wi-Fi went out. Let me join on my phone. That might take a minute because you have to download.
She's here. She's here.
Oh, nice. You have to download an annoying app.
I'm sorry.
No, you're cool. Good. It happens to us all the time.
Yeah, we were just wrapping up talking about Huntington Beach conservatives Yeah, Huntington Beach is where all the Nazi punks are from, so
Yeah.
they can go fuck themselves.
And trust me, they're not cut out for combat. Let's just say that. they're
real master race vibes going on. But anyways,
Okay.
cool. Like I want to do this episode to kind of like chill out the temperature, take it down a little bit. Because it was the past week has been so reactionary.
It's
on
been
both
insane.
sides.
Yeah, and please don't like it sends such a bad message. And it confirms the bias of the Trump whenever we engage in celebrating a successful, what I call Mossad operation. Like, we don't want to celebrate a successful operation to create a huge division. That's not something we want to do.
Right.
And we just don't want to behave like the extremities of MAGA. We don't want to behave like that.
Yeah, we
It's
don't
not-
want to give them ammo.
exactly.
And also from a militant leftist perspective, whether you're anarchist or like Marxist Leninist who believes in revolutionary armed struggle, that wasn't that. Even if it was a lone actor who took out Charlie Kirk, that's called adventurism, and it's actually bad for the movement, and it brings down the government forces and accomplishes absolutely nothing. We on Colonial Adcast vehemently oppose adventurism in all of its forms. How about you guys start by organizing in your communities instead of doing dumb shit like this that makes it worse for the most vulnerable people in our society? So
Exactly.
that's our message about that. If it was on the off chance it wasn't a Mossad operation. So
Yeah,
all right, guys.
build cross-sectional local power systems. Build
100%.
neighborhood defense mechanisms that not just protect your left, but it protects everybody in your neighborhood so that people can be seduced to the left. You have to seduce people to it. You have to show them that it works, that it makes their lives better. Give them a taste of what, and we're not going to call it socialism. We're going to call it united sovereignty. That's what we're going to call it. With the bald eagle screeching in the background.
Hey,
Heck yeah.
real quick, before we end, did you get a face tat? Like, what's on your eye?
No, it's dye. I was dealing with a.
Did you get a
thing,
face
so
tat?
It's blue dye.
I thought we were in like life crisis zone, and I need to know if I was going to be on tiptoes. So,
it's spousal abuse. I got punched in the eye by my wife. We'll just say
yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to talk about that next time because I got to go. So, thanks y'all so much for watching. Everybody, chill out and talk to your neighbors and stop like doing what the ruling class wants you to do. So we are joined today by Caroline Stout. She just recently started on social media, and we will link her TikTok and Instagram videos where she does short little video essays about how to talk to the right and get them over into better, more generous politics. So thank you so much for coming on, and we will see you on the next one. I'm on the flotilla again. Going to be hit by some gales tomorrow, and I'll keep you updated. You can follow my account on Instagram for updates, but I think Mark is still generally going to be in charge until I'm back. If Incubator doesn't throw us into long term. Cheers, y'all. On that note, we're going to head out. Bye.